Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Moore. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we are here to talk about the Boeing Apple Cup. Do I normally say the sponsor names? No. However, does it set me up to make a joke about how the door completely blew off for Washington State and they suffered explosive decompression in the fourth quarter? Tony, it sure does.
The good news is the Washington State Cougars never felt a thing. It was over before they knew it was over, as the Huskies scored, 28 points in the fourth quarter and did not help themselves in any of that by turning the ball over and just really making a mess of things in that last 15 minutes. And the first 45 minutes of this game were pretty darn good. Washington State kept fighting back and doing what they had to do. But yes, we are here to revisit the 59-24 win for Washington over Washington State in the Apple Cup. I don't know how many people watched it live. Probably not that many. I had it on here and there and would, then because it started getting good, I was like, well, I'm just going to keep this one on here. And then it got bad, and it was, let's not talk about it, but we have to. We are here to talk about it, Tom. And the first thing I want to talk about is, I think, what you always have to talk about with Washington. And again, let's start with quarterback DeMond Williams. 16 of 19, 298 yards, 4 touchdowns, carried the ball 13 times for 88 yards. 28 of those yards were lost via sacks or negative runs. Had a long rush of 26 yards. So basically, touched the ball 32 times, throwing and rushing, and put up almost 400 yards. And he is one of the best playmakers in the Big Ten, regardless of position. Maybe there's a separate show of where exactly is he in the hierarchy of Big Ten playmakers. He's not the biggest guy. He got sacked 3 times, but he is dangerous as all heck still. And we said it last week. We're going to say it again this week.
Yeah, he definitely is someone that you can never assume, okay, well, he's in a bad spot, so everything will be fine now. No. He is. There was one play where he looked like he was going to be sacked and sort of spun away from that, got out of the pocket, got it out to Jonah Coleman, the running back. He also made someone miss out in space, and it was, you just went from an 8-yard loss on a sack to about a 30-yard gain through the air. And it was like, how did he do that? And he consistently will make plays with his legs. Sometimes it's a design run, and he was very effective in the design run game. But a lot of times it's just third down, he's in the pocket, no one's open. Okay, he'll just scramble for the first down. His first step is fast. He gets up to top speed almost immediately. And I think he's going to be one of those guys where you've seen him on film and you go, okay, this guy's fast. It just feels like the way he outruns angles. It just seems like he's one of those guys who's faster on the field than he looks on film. So you feel like, okay, I've got to take a little bit of a different angle on him. And then he just kind of jets right past you. And he is able to make plays with his legs. He's also very comfortable throwing the ball downfield. Like he will just heave one downfield and as often as not connects with someone, and as often as not, it's Denzel Boston, the wide receiver who we talked about. We watched the Colorado State game, and I came away thinking there are 3 names you need to know on this offense, and it is Denzel Boston, the wide receiver, DeMond Williams, the quarterback, and Jonah Coleman, the running back. And after watching another game, I think, Tony, there are 3 names you need to know on the Washington offense. Those are them. Other than that, you look down the rest, they had Muhammad, the backup running back, 6 carries for 25 yards. He had 1 rush for 20 and then 5 carries for 5 yards. You had, outside of those 2 guys, Boston and Coleman both had 100 yards receiving. Amari Evans had a 59-yard touchdown in garbage time. Other than that, Muhammad had 1 reception for 16 yards, and that was it. And a couple of guys had 1 reception for less than 10 yards each. This is really a team where you don't want to say, listen, no one else matters, but also kind of based on what we've seen so far this year, those 3 guys, and if someone else beats you, someone else beats you. But those are the 3 guys you really got to kind of focus on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who else. If you are stopping those 3 guys, there's not enough around them to beat you. I'm wondering, do you only need to stop 1? Do you need to stop 2? I feel like if if you stop one, then you're going to be in a pretty good spot because any one of those three, you stop them, and then who else is behind them? Who else is going to make this make something happen? The Amari Evans that you mentioned had a 59-yard touchdown, a deep shot in the. I think it may have been a little bit of just a broken coverage, but this is at the end of the game when Washington's already up 52-28 or 50, yeah, 50, whatever, 52-24. And all of Washington starters are still in the game on offense. Quarterback, you get the running back, you get the receivers out there, and they're still throwing it around, trying to, I don't know, put a stamp on this one. But outside of those three, there's a bunch of questions. However, those three, you can put those three against any other three players in college football, and they're going to stand their own. They're going to hold their own. Like, one of my thoughts on Denzel Boston, the wide receiver, is he could play at Ohio State, and to me that's a high praise for a wide receiver. And he could play at Ohio State. He had a couple of touchdowns in this one. He had a nice fade in the end zone where the cornerback stood no shot against him. The ball was thrown high where he could go get it. The quarterback was just being towered over. And he started off the game in the slot. Like, they'll move him around, they'll get him involved. What do you have? He had 106 yards or something like that receiving in this one, and was 107 on 6 catches. The Jonah Coleman thing, career high day in receptions and yards, 6 for 104, 93 of those after contact, or yards after the catch rather. So these are all catching the ball near the line of scrimmage, and then he's just doing what he does because Jonah Coleman is a beast and hard to tackle and hard to deal with. Rushed for 59 yards on 12 carries, long of 13. So they held him in check there, and maybe that's why it was a tie game, 7-point game very early in the fourth quarter, that they were able to contain that running aspect. But Washington still ran for 173, 5.2 per carry, 3 for 298. This offense is fun to watch. It's so tied into DeMond Williams, though. And this offensive line, Tom, they've not been challenged, but they've also been giving up some stuff. So, like, right guard, Gary and Hatchett got pushed back a couple of times. There's room for an Ohio State defensive line to make this offensive line stay hell, and then by proxy, DeMond Williams as well. It's just, what does he do once that chaos starts? And do they contain him? Does he get out and make something happen? He does not handle the blitzes all that well. He does not handle, as most quarterbacks, the straight rush up the middle can affect him. But boy, the offensive line to me is where Ohio State can attack these guys in terms of the offense. And then you just deal with what else happens around that.
Yeah, you mentioned a name or two there that kind of had some trouble at points. I have left tackle Carver Willis, number 50. He gave up a sack, I think, on the first snap of the game. I mean, it was just, and he had another one or two where it was like, yeah, that's real obvious holding because you got beaten around the edge and it didn't always get called. But, that's a spot where you could maybe take advantage of someone off the edge. I don't know that that's a winning matchup against someone like Arvell Reese, for example. And then John Mills, the left guard, he is 17 years old, true freshman, number 72. That is insane that you are physically able to hold up as a Big Ten left guard as a 17-year-old. That is incredibly impressive. Has he played a Big Ten team yet? No, he has not. What will that look like against Caden McDonald or Edric Houston or Will Smith Jr.? I mean, we'll all find out on Saturday. I look at the offensive line and I think there's a lot of guys who you look and go, yeah, he might need a little bit of help against, name the Ohio State player who might be across the line. You can't give them all help. You can't double everyone. So I think that's going to be an area where Williams got sacked 3 times against Washington State and also had several times when he made someone miss in the pocket and extended a play or, ended up scrambling for a big gain. The players are going to be bigger. They're going to be coming faster. They are going to be better tacklers than the Washington State guys. The offensive line is definitely, I think, the area that I look at on offense and go, that might be a problem for Washington. And, if Washington does not score, we talked about this on an episode of the morning show, but Washington has 0 punts and 0 turnovers on their last 23 possessions, their last 23 drives, 19 touchdowns, 2 field goals, 2 kneel downs. I'm expecting a punt. I'm probably expecting a turnover on Saturday. I think that streak will probably come to an end, and that will probably be because of the offensive line. And the thing that worries me a little bit from Washington's perspective on Damon Williams is he does not slide. Mm-hmm. He is going to fight for every last yard, and that is wonderful. That is very admirable, heart of a champion, all that kind of stuff. Remember when I said that their guys are going to be bigger and faster and stronger and coming at you with a greater amount of force than you have seen earlier this year? You may want to get down, and you may want to find, get out of bounds. Don't necessarily fight for the extra couple of yards. That doesn't seem, because Williams is an immensely talented player. I stood next to him at Big Ten Media Days. He is not a big dude. He is not someone that is going to be physically imposing, even like a Bryce Underwood would be. That's not the kind of quarterback he is. I look at him in the open field and think, you'd better get down. You'd better really pick your battles. If it's 4th and whatever, and you need to get to the marker, get to the marker. Like, do what you got to do to get to the marker. If it's 1st and 10 and you've picked up 13 yards, you should be sliding. That is, he almost seems to seek out contact. He took some really big hits, even on plays that weren't sacks. He had a scramble where one Washington State guy hit him, and then another guy kind of cleaned him up a little bit and really drilled him into the turf. That just feels like that's not going to be something that's sustainable all season long. And I don't know how sustainable it's going to be over 3 hours against Ohio State.
Yeah, he was taking some shots there in the second half as well, even when they were up by 14. You wouldn't necessarily need to do that. He needs to get down. But this is also a game where every yard is going to be important. And so how do you balance that safety, flight versus fight, a slide versus fight type of thing? Because he's a competitor and he is tenacious, but he was sacked 3 times against Colorado State, sacked 3 times against Washington State. And this is a guy who's able to get out of sacks as well. So the Ohio State defense getting after him initially, and then he needs to get down so that he's when the Buckeyes are cleaning up, they're not cleaning up in a way that leaves him down for the count. I think maybe the last thing that I wanted to mention on the offense, and that Adam Mohammed, the backup running back, who looks like this big back. The first time we saw him, I'm like, this guy looks like he's is he their version of C.J. Donaldson, like 6'2", 225? He's 6 foot 212. The reason he looks so big is because he's standing next to Damon Williams, or you're used to seeing Jonah Coleman out there, and Damon Williams is all of 5'11", Jonah Coleman's all of 5'8". He just looks comparatively big to the smaller guys that they normally have in the backfield. But he's a guy, like, I'm not gonna denigrate him. Like, he's a legit backup in the Big Ten, and he will play in this game. Just tackle him, because he is strong. He's a strong runner. But yeah, like the 3 guys that you need to know are the 3 guys we mentioned. You mentioned the Carver Willis, the left tackle. He was Will Howard's left tackle at Kansas State. So small world. He's not the only guy from Kansas State to show up against the Buckeyes. They happened in the Rose Bowl last year as well.
Yeah, and obviously a big fan of the color purple. So it's going to be interesting to see how this line holds up, because they've given up tackles for loss, they've given up sacks, they've given up lots of pressure, and they haven't faced a defense that's kind of the caliber of the defense they're going to play. So yeah, that to me is a bit of a concern. On the other side of the ball, the defensive line, I don't view the defensive line as a real concern. That doesn't look, I could see the Ohio State defensive line versus the Washington offensive line being a little bit of a mismatch that goes a long way towards deciding how this game goes. Mm-hmm. The other side, the defensive line, I've been pretty impressed with them overall. They rotate a ton of guys through there. I think they said they rotated like 11 or 12 guys through in the last couple of games, and they were rotating very deep as well in this game. And Washington State couldn't do anything on the ground. And, Washington State's offensive line is no great shakes, but they finished 28 carries, 27 yards, even sack adjusted. You remove the sacks, they rushed for 1.9 yards per carry. And Washington also had a ton of pressure on the quarterbacks. They finished with 3 sacks, but it felt like they could have had 7 tackles for loss, and it felt like they were just kind of constantly in there and constantly pressuring Washington State's quarterback, where he's kind of throwing off platform. You had guys open in the secondary, and we'll get to the secondary in a minute, but Washington was able to kind of compensate for that with a pretty good pass rush. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that against Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State's going to be able to just run the ball like crazy against them by any means. I'm also not expecting them to hold Ohio State to 1.9 yards per carry sack adjusted. But, on the whole, as far as the defense goes, the defensive front, I think, seems like it's at least a solid unit on the whole.
It's not something you're looking at and you're going, well, Ohio State's going to run for 250 yards on these guys. They might. I'm not expecting it, but you certainly need a couple of long ones in there. We finally got to see more of defensive end Zach Durfee, who was one of the players to watch against Colorado State, and we tried and we didn't really see much. And this one, he had a pass rush that led to an interception. So that was good to see that. There's an Uiagalelei on this defensive line. I don't recall seeing him against Colorado State or hearing his name. And so that was an interesting one. I'm not blown away by anything on defense from these guys. No, Adam McLaughlin is Aaron Adam.
It is. I have him down here. He is. Oh, I know I had him. He had 2 interceptions.
Yeah, 2 interceptions.
Yeah,
as that
Alex
deep
McLaughlin.
safety.
There he is.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
It can only be so many of those. He former walk-on from Northern Arizona, I believe. Mm-hmm. And again, he is their deep safety. 6 tackles, 2 interceptions, and had a pick 6 in this one. And basically that turned the game. That was the end. That was the maybe the straw that broke the camel there. And that was the beginning of the end. But anything else? Well, and the one of their linebackers got hurt.
Yeah,
and
that was Tariq Al-Uqda. He got kind of rolled up on, and they showed him on the sideline, and it did not look good. It looked like, that's probably a high ankle sprain or maybe a knee, and it did not look like, he'll be fine for next week. I have not seen any kind of an update on him yet. But just from how it looked, he does not look like someone who's going to be 100% next week.
No, and that would be a significant loss for them because he is their number 2 tackler, I believe. Do you want to talk about the secondary now, Tom?
I think we should talk about the secondary. We had the positive conversation about the secondary already, which is Alex McLaughlin, who is sort of the just annoying guy who, I'm not going to say deceptively athletic, but if I did, you would kind of get the right picture. He is someone who just sort of is always around the ball, and the ball kind of finds him. And it was a deflected pass that he intercepted on the first one, and it was a one where the throw was kind of behind the receiver, and he made a nice play on the ball, broke on it well, and ended up picking it off and running it back for a touchdown. But it's not, this is not the athletic freak that you go, wow, this is, he's not Caleb Downs, but also the ball just kind of keeps finding him, and he keeps making plays on the ball. And at some point that stops being a coincidence. So, that's, I think, a very positive for Washington in the secondary. Tony, can we have the conversation about Leroy Bryant, number 0, the slot corner? Because I remember I'm watching him and I'm having flashbacks to when we were watching Tennessee last year, and I'm going, oh, this dude's about to have a real bad time. Like you're watching it wasn't Jermod McCoy. It was the other. Ricky Gibson was the corner for Tennessee. And it was just, we're watching him play against Georgia, and it was like, oh, you're about to have a bad day, friend. And that was one, I saw him lined up over Jeremiah Smith in the first quarter, and I went, oh, here comes the touchdown. And it was immediately a touchdown. Like, he plays in the slot, and I just think he might not have a great day on Saturday. It just, he gave up a long pass down the right sideline. He gave up a slant for a touchdown. He gave up a long post down the middle of the field. And, he's not going to be one-on-one. Those were 3 plays where he was one-on-one, and he got burnt on all 3 of them. And that's Washington State receivers. Like, I think you're going to be facing more athletic receivers and a better quarterback and an offensive line that is going to have better pass protection. And you're not going to be able to have a safety help on every play. Like, so you're going to have to figure it out. And it just watching it, it was just kind of like, sometimes you just kind of go, oh, like, this might not go great. That was someone who I kind of looked at and thought, yeah, this might not go great.
Well, and then he got benched, and he didn't come back until late in the game when it was over. Like, he gave up. I don't know if it was after like the last deep shot that he gave up. Then they just like, no, you're done. And redshirt freshman Rashawn Clark went in for him, and also true freshman Dylan Robinson went in for him. I think the biggest issue here was starting cornerback Takario Davis was out.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they held him out so that he would be for sure able to go against Ohio State. So then you had Leroy Bryant also having to play outside corner, which he's their nickel, and so he was a little bit playing a position that you play nickel because maybe nobody wants you. You're not desirable outside enough, so you play nickel. But he was giving up catches on the inside, he was giving up catches on the outside, and then finally it was like send in the second teamer, send in the freshman, and so they had cornerback Dylan Robinson, who was a true freshman, out there a lot there then in the second half, and I don't know if that's a great solution either. I know it's not. So they need Takario Davis back. And even when they get him, Takario Davis had his issues against Colorado State. We'll just remind you of that. So the secondary here, if you give Julian Sayin time to throw, I expect them to do very well against Washington's secondary. Nothing I've seen to this point where you're like, stay away from this guy, stay away from that guy. Ephesians Prysock, I don't even know if they needed to go at him in this one because they had the whole Leroy Bryant thing.
Right. And they threw it at Prysock a few times, and he was pretty physical on at least a couple of the throws in his direction and didn't get called for anything. But that's something where if you're being physical with Washington State's guys, you're going to have to be more physical, presumably, with Ohio State's guys if you're going to try and, I think that's just something to sort of keep an eye on. And, both of the outside corners for Washington, we talked about this on the last show, they're both 6'4". So that's going to be a really interesting matchup to see. They're not necessarily guys you can go up and beat high as they have been able to do all against a lot of corners this year, but you might be able to beat them deep. It just feels like if Ohio State can give Julian Sayin time, there are going to be opportunities in the secondary, and Washington is going to have to. I think the front seven is pretty good. I think it's going to be solid. I don't think they're going to be able to blow up the run game like they did against Washington State. If Ohio State's able to run the ball early, I think that's going to be a big red warning sign for Washington. If you see whether it's James Peoples or CJ Donaldson or Bo Jackson running for 5-6 yards early in the game, and you're going to, and then Washington maybe had to bring someone else down into the box, that's really going to open things up downfield. I think Washington may try and sort of play it straight or keep a couple guys deep. Ryan Walters has for years and years and years been a man coverage guy. I think you're going to have to keep safeties deep because I don't think these are corners that can just play man against these Ohio State wide receivers. So I think you're going to have to keep a couple guys deep, which then potentially, if you're playing man, you're running with your back, you're running with the wide receivers with your back to the line of scrimmage. That can open up big plays in the run game. So I think there's just a lot of stuff here that I kind of look at for Washington and go, I don't love that matchup for them, just based on what we've seen in the first 3 games. And we don't know how much they've shown. Have they shown everything they're going to show? Probably not. I'm sure they'll have some fun new stuff for Ohio State, but the defense, I just look at and go, I can see areas where you may not have a great time.
Yeah, especially if they're banged up at linebackers, maybe banged up at corner. It was interesting. Prysock was in the nickel at one point in the first half. He's in the slot on 3rd down, so I don't know if that was something they normally do, and that's just where they put him, and then they put the smaller guys outside to handle things, or if he was following somebody around. I don't know. Defensively, I'm looking at this drive chart, and Washington State had a drive in the 4th quarter. 10 plays, 14 yards, 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, that's fantastic. Good job. I don't know how. I
Yeah,
assume a penalty or some losses there, but
that was, I gotta find that one in the play by play. It was, they had an 11-yard sack. They picked it up. They picked up a first down to midfield, and then had a sack for 11 yards. Had a pass that was dropped. Had a fumbled snap, and then a pass that was dropped. It was you picked up a couple first downs, and then had the wheels completely fell off. Sack, dropped pass, fumbled snap, and then another drop. So I would advise anyone playing Washington, not just Washington State, rivals or not. I would advise anyone to not have a drive like that because it won't end well.
So basically nine drives for Washington State in this game. They had drives of 8 plays, 11, 8, 1, 7, and don't even count that one. That was a nail down at the end of the half. So 8, 11, 8, 7, 9, 7, 1, which was a fumble, then a 10. The only 3 and out they had came at the end of the game when they punted from their own territory, because the game was over. But that was the only 3 and out for Washington State, and there's just a lot of signs here that Ohio State should be able to score some points, and that defensively for Ohio State they should be able to have more wins than losses. I don't expect Washington to score on every possession. I'll say that. I don't know if that's save it for the bold predictions, but I can't wait to get there. The road atmosphere is going to change. It's going to add to it as well. It's just not about the numbers, but there are enough interesting numbers here where you can see why Ohio State has opened as like a 13-point favorite. Then I saw it might be down to like 10. So who knows where it'll be by the time the game gets here. But anything else on the defense that you wanted to touch on?
No, the only other note I had was on the place kicker, Grady Gross, who 2 years ago was great. Last year, he, I think, just kind of had the yips. And then on Saturday, drilled a 51-yarder straight down the middle and hit the net. So it's good from 55 at least. And if he's back to what he had been earlier in his career, that's someone who could be a potential difference maker if this game comes down to the back half of the fourth quarter. That's certainly a nice club to have in your bag to be able to just trot out someone to just casually drill a 50-yarder. That is not a luxury that every team has. So that's I think something just to kind of keep in the back of your mind.
Washington State threw an onside kick in there, which you can completely understand. You got make it, take it. If you got an opportunity to steal possessions, you have to do it. So applaud them for that. Interestingly, so Buda Alukta, the linebacker we talked about, formerly of Washington State, made that transfer from Washington State to Washington. Anything else from this game that you wanted to touch on before we get out of here?
No, I think people are going to come away from this and say Ohio State 42, Washington 13. I think you're going to have to account for the crowd, the atmosphere, the cross-country travel, all that kind of stuff. I think Ohio State has a pretty clear talent advantage in a lot of places. Like this is going to be a lot like, I remember covering the Rose Bowl, the Jake Browning year, 2018. And you had the Ohio State interviews and you had the Washington interviews, and the Washington offensive linemen were all like 30 pounds lighter and 4 inches shorter than the Ohio State offensive linemen. And you kind of went, oh, that's how this is going to go. I think you're going to see some kind of the sort of physical advantage that Ohio State has over a lot of those other teams, but the Washington crowd, the Washington Stadium, just sort of blowing up an Ohio State drive because of a false start and a delay of game, and all of a sudden it's 3rd and 17 instead of 3rd and 7. You could see something like that, and that may kill one Ohio State possession. And if you have a 9 possession kind of game like we've seen a lot this year, that can make a difference because Washington is going to score some. They're not, you're not going to shut this team out. This is a game where Washington's going to be, Washington scoring 20 points or so feels like that's probably about what the average of people are going to say, 20, 24 points, something like that. You get one drive that gets blown up for Ohio State, and all of a sudden this could be a close game in the fourth quarter. So I think we watch this game and here's lots of areas where I see potential issues for Washington, but that crowd, that stadium, that atmosphere, you could see that leveling things out a decent amount.
Third downs are the equalizer for both sides, whether it's the crowd creating an issue on third down for Ohio State, or DeMond Williams picking up a third down and just frustrating the heck out of that Ohio State defense? Because there's nobody on the Ohio State scout team that can mimic what DeMond Williams does, unless you throw Turbo Rogers or somebody out there, and they're not as fast as he is. I promise you. So that's Mason Maggs, all due respect. You're not DeMond Williams. So there's no way to accurately replicate this. I know back in the years past, one time they had Jalen Gill or doing some work as the quarterback. So you got to do what you can do and try to figure it out. Again, I can't wait. It's going to be a level up in speed from what Ohio State has seen to this point. But they did play Texas, so it's a step down in physicality, and just overall the speed of the quarterback is the biggest thing, because the corners, everybody else has been challenged. They've seen something similar to what they'll see today or on Saturday, but DeMond Williams is a different level from everybody they've seen so far. So don't want to harp on it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to harp on it much more throughout the week, before the game and after the game. Continue to follow us here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. Now would be a perfect time to do it if you haven't. Of course, if you hit the thumbs up, we would appreciate that as well. And you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com talking about all of this on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeffrey Luis Columbus. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.